Welcome at our LinkedIn, Facebook, and even YouTube live. I'm so happy that I have Maghan Haggerty all the way from New York. She's specifically flown to live stream with us here today. Thank you so much, Maghan. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a long flight into my office.
I can't imagine. You don't look jet lagged at all.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to quickly just introduce you, Maghan, because I think for people to really understand your credibility and where you're coming from. So, Maghan is a certified Gallup strengths coach, and she helps individuals and teams to gain clarity of purpose, direction, and connection by guiding them through the discovery of their natural strengths. She helps her clients not just identify, but understand, celebrate, and aim their unique talents towards their goals. During Maghan's 20 plus career in marketing and advertising, she helped brands position themselves to showcase their best attributes and communicate their benefits to the world. Now she's working to help individuals and teams to do the same, to highlight and activate what is best, not necessarily fixate on perceived flaws. I love that about you. Maghan's genius is seeing people's individuality, connecting with their heart, and truly listening to co create pathways for individuals to develop these strengths. She uses tools like Gallup's Clifton Strengths assessment to help her clients unlock their talents and reach their full potential. And Maghan's top 5 Clifton strengths are empathy, learner, connectedness, individualization, and achiever. Maghan, I wanted to ask you, when did you, for the first time, do your first Clifton Strengths test, and what was the impact of that on your life?
My journey with Clifton Strengths, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. My journey with Clifton Strengths has been kind of a long and winding one. I was first introduced to it in 2009. I came across the book, Go Discover Your Strengths, that Gallup had put out. And what struck me when I was reading that book was the idea that just because you are good at something doesn't necessarily mean it is, a true talent or a true strength. At the time, I was in a job that, while I was really good at, I was actually, people had asked me to be on their team. I was getting, a lot of praise for what I was doing, but I would go home at the end of every single day completely drained and just not happy in what I was doing. And so I came across this book, and in the back of the book, there was a code to take the assessment. And so I got my top 5. And I remember that reading it felt very much like it was me on a piece of paper. It was me, but in a way that I had never thought of myself in that way before. But the challenge there was, this was back in 2009. This was before I knew that there was I hadn't been really introduced into the personal and professional development realm. I didn't know there was such a thing as a coach that could actually help you figure out how to activate these talents. So I did what I think a lot of people end up doing is I read it, completely felt like me, and then I put it in a drawer and I completely forgot about it. I never really used the tool. And then I came across it again about 8 years later. I was reading the book Pivot by Jenny Blake. And, and she mentioned the tool as a great way to really get to know your talents. And I was like, I remember taking that. So I ended up taking the assessment a second time, which just, side note, not something that you necessarily need to do. Like if you took it a few years ago, your talents are likely not changing very much over time. But I took it again a second time, and I got my full 34 this time. So the Clifton Strengths, for anyone not familiar with it, is an assessment that helps you identify your natural areas of talent. And Gallup, that puts out the assessment, has identified 34 themes of talent. So things like activator, things like individualization, empathy, learner, like you mentioned earlier. And it helps you identify where your natural talents lie. So I was like, I got my full 34 profile. So from number 1 to number 34. And it helped me again see and validate, who I was and what I was doing. But now I had more information to go off of. So I actually started looking at the full spectrum, and probably did what a lot of people do that you're told not to do with Clifton Strengths, which is look at like the lower end of my of the Clifton Strengths and try to start fixing.
I did that just today. I was looking at what are those low ones, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's human nature, right? And we've been taught. I mean, we were taught in school when we got our, if we got a report card, if we had a C in one subject and an A in all of the other subjects, we focused in on the subject where we got the C, not in the subject where we got the A's. When we're given performance evaluations at work, very little time is spent on the things we're doing well, and we focus so much on the things that are not going right. And so it's human nature to look at, okay, what are those things I need to fix about myself? And it wasn't until like a few years later where I really started diving in. And my learner is, if you pique a learner's curiosity on a subject, they will go down all the rabbit holes. They will watch all the videos. They will read all the books. We just love to take in information. And my learner really went into overdrive about 2 or 3 years ago. And I started to just understand more about Clifton Strengths and the philosophy behind it, and also starting to understand how those strengths that were in my profile applied to me. And it's really helped me. It's helped me make decisions in my life in terms of, what jobs I should, approach, or what might fit my talents. It's helped me understand how to have relationships with other people. It's helped understanding my own strengths. Has helped me understand the strengths and talents of other people. And when you can understand that, it really helps facilitate communication and collaboration.
What was interesting for me earlier today, I was trying to see which talents do we have that overlap, and I saw that your number 2 is learner, and I think that's mine, number 10. Mm-hmm. But as I was reading through it, what was interesting is actually saying this is how to maybe activate the strength, and then there's things to watch out for. And what I found interesting, I think it was of learner, was where they said, if you're going down all of those rabbit holes, make sure that you don't just get stuck in learning and never make any decisions, or that it actually has an impact on your productivity. So I was actually thinking it's a really good thing for me to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people that love studying. So they'll keep on studying and they'll keep on doing another master's, another honors or whatever, but then possibly actually not getting through to anything else. I'm seeing a LinkedIn user is saying, which talent is the best one to have? Maghan, any question for that? Is that?
And I see the winky face next to that comment, so it makes me wonder if it's somebody that I know. There is no best talent to have. The wonderful thing about the talents are you can apply them in so many different ways, but talents by themselves are inherently neutral. There's no positive or negative to them. What you were just talking about was what Gallup calls out in the report as blind spots.
Blind spots, yes.
So if you've ever heard there's a phrase that's often used, your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. And so that is one of the things that needs to be redefined when you're thinking about Clifton Strengths is what is a strength and what is a weakness.
So what is your definition of those two?
A strength, and what's interesting about Clifton Strengths is, even though it's called Clifton Strengths, it actually doesn't identify your strengths. It identifies your talent, your natural talents, those natural places where you instinctively think, feel, and behave. What a strength is if you take those natural talents, those ones at the top of your strengths profile that indicate where you have the greatest potential for success, if you take investment in time, in effort, in practice, in really building those skills, then they can truly become strengths. A weakness.
And is that like really where coaching is beneficial, or where you're like doing group activities and things like maybe as a team together to actually help the person do something about it, hey?
Yes, because the more you can lean in and understand how the talents show up for you, and you can practice using them, the more you can more accurately aim them towards an objective or goal. And whether that is an individual or as a team, you can, the more you are able to have that conversation, the more that you're able to figure out how do I apply my empathy in an effective way? Or how do you, Yoke, apply your activator in the most effective way? The more you get to practice that, the more you'll be able to do it almost without even thinking. It will become, just natural to you.
Can you give me a suggestion?
It's funny, I've found that in all the people that I've coached over the last few months, I went in and I looked, and I have one of the top talents that keeps coming up in the people that I coach is activator. And I think I might actually somehow just want to bring in activators in my life, because it's not a talent that I have high in my profile. What I love about activators is you are instinctively ready to just move. You get an idea and it's like, let's go. I don't want to wait. I don't want to. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, analyze it too much, because if you get into that over analyzation of it, you will then, it might end up stopping you from doing it. So you want to get going and get moving. And the beauty of activator really is in the ability to influence others to movement and to moving forward. So I think why I bring a lot of activators in my life is it helps me, kind of revs my engine and gets me going, and gets me out of stuck. So I think for you, a way of really bringing it forward is just understanding that it's there, and understanding that it is there to help you when you have a challenge or there's something that you're reaching for, that, you can really trust your instinct. That, I think, combined with a lot of your other talents, because we're never only just living in one talent. We're a combination of talents coming together. And, I think with, you put a video out last week on your top 3, and just based off of getting your report, and I was so impressed by how naturally, and you had an understanding of what your talents were, because you really paid attention to how they come about in your life and how they've helped you. So I might, as a coach, actually turn it around on you and say, well, how has it helped you? How have you seen it in you, in what you do, and how you apply that moving forward?
So something had happened last week. So when I was going through this in a lot more detail, I was like, oh my goodness, that's why I enjoy brainstorming sessions and strategy sessions with new businesses so much, and helping them build their stories. So very recently, a client of mine said they have a startup business that's not really taking off. Can I help them with their sales strategy, but really getting into ideation and like reading through my strings? I actually laughed. I was like, wow, now I understand why they wanted me to help them, because the ideas were just coming, but it was also helping them do the work. And I think what I love with teams, for instance, is, and that's like from the coaching side, like you said, actually asking the questions of the people, helping them come up with the ideas. So even if you have the ideas, not necessarily saying it, like steering the ship in the right direction, and maybe planting ideas that can then go into more detail. I see there's another comment by Dr. Jajad Zeb. Wouldn't it be hasty to simply start something? What would be the right approach?
Yes, that's actually a very good point. And so that gets into the idea of blind spots that we brought up before. So a blind spot is, anything, that when you're using your talent without intention, or you're using it and somebody else might see it or perceive it in a certain way. So like I said earlier, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. So there definitely can be a downside to just moving at the speed So sometimes what you'll need to do is, if you find yourself being pulled towards just jumping in over and over and over without really having that thought, you might go, okay, that's going to be my natural inclination. What's another talent that might help me moderate that? Or what's a talent from somebody I'm partnered with that can help me moderate that? So for you, it might be, looking at your profile, you're restorative. Restorative is somebody who looks at, has the ability to walk in, see something that's not working right, and have an idea of how to fix it. So your restorative might give your activator first a little bit of a glance of, okay, let me look to see what's not working so that I make sure that when I move forward, I'm working towards the thing that's going to make it better. You can do that with any of your talents. So any talent can moderate or modify, or they might amplify it. If you need something to even push you forward even more, you might look to another one of your talents to do that. So very great observation that it's, just because you have activator does not mean that you should just jump right in all things.
No, definitely. What I was talking about more was getting the ideas and getting people to come up with ideas, but then you need to assess it. So not necessarily thinking that every idea is going to be great, but that really was to do with the value proposition model and the business model canvas, looking at like your business plan on a one pager. I wanted to ask you, Maghan, how can strengths be used in a remote working context?
I think, I've been thinking about this, obviously, since this has become our world for the last year, in how helpful it is. Because what strengths can do is help you understand not just the wonderful contributions that you bring to the world, but it also has the ability to let you understand, to know what you need. And when you know what you need, you can then communicate that. And I think in a remote working environment, while there's in some ways that we've become closer to one another because we've now seen the inside of our each other's homes, there's something that we're missing in that face-to-face communication, those cues that we pick up on just in being in communication with one another. So being able to really share what's going on, what's the value you bring, and also what is it that your talents need. You can do that. It allows you to kind of collaborate in this remote environment without having to kind of have that in-person environment.
So it's really about communicating and collaborating and finding ways of actually partnering with people that also maybe have what you don't necessarily have.
It's finding ways to partner you can partner with people who don't have it, or you might partner with someone who has similar talents to you and, just magnify that.
Oh, right. So it doesn't have to necessarily be opposites, because
exactly.
I've heard a lot of people that do e-colors. I don't know if you've ever heard of the e-colors, which is personality tests, and they in general say that in a team, you should try to make sure that you get the different traits so that not so many of the same people are there. So I think that's in terms of the blind spots. But I get what you're saying. It probably depends what the goal of the team is, what strengths they actually need. Everyone doesn't necessarily need everything.
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of, I love Gallup's work and the research that they do on staff engagement and productivity. Can strengths help teams to be more engaged? What are your views around that?
Absolutely. And Gallup, you're right, has an incredible amount of data. I mean, they are, that is what they do. And the most recent book they put out, called It's the Manager, has a ton of information specifically around engagement of a team. And one of the things that they found is, that it is the manager, that manager level really does have the most impact in terms of engagement with employees. And one of the really interesting facts that Gallup has found is that while it's not surprising that if a manager focuses in on an employee's talents and strengths in working together, their engagement goes up. And if they focus in more on their weaknesses, the engagement is less so. But what's surprising and probably not thought of is if somebody feels like their manager is not paying attention to them at all, strengths or weaknesses, it actually turns from engagement to active disengagement. They might actively, become that person that is working against the needs of the organization. So working with your employees and specifically with strengths is really important there.
So when employees become actively disengaged, is that where they actually start damaging the reputation of the business, or like what would they typically be doing?
It's anything that's going to be working against the team, getting to success, whatever that success is. It could be, talking bad, it could be, not delivering on something that somebody else on the team needs. It's almost like an acting out. It's a feeling like, if I'm not being cared for, why should I care about the needs of the organization or the team?
Something that I found to be really interesting in the stats that you sent me was that there's a 1 in 33 million chance that someone will have the same top 5 talents as you. Why is that important?
What I love about Clifton Strengths is it really does get to the heart of the individual. And even though there are 34 themes of talent and we all have them in some degree, and they show up for us in different ways, the way they show up for us is always going to be unique depending on the full profile. So that number is based on just the top 5. So to find your identical strengths twin, which is what we call someone who has the exact same top 5 in the exact same order, 1 in 33 is a big number. The even bigger number, if you expand that out to all 34 talents, it's 295 undecillion, which is 295 with 36 zeros after it. There's not enough people on the planet Earth for multiple generations to share those same talents as you do. So I think it really gets to the uniqueness of the individual.
And like what I love about that, before we'll get into this question of Nina's, there's actually 2 sides. I just want to show you the first and then the second bit is I really dislike putting people in boxes. So when I studied NLP, it was all about people are unique. You can never put them in a box. You cannot possibly read someone's mind. Just because someone is crossing their arms doesn't mean this or this. Just if someone cries doesn't mean that they're sad or they're mad. You need to ask them. It can be an indicator. So like for me, even doing this test, I can know that it's still only an indicator. It could have had an impact on how I felt on the day or the thoughts going through my mind while I was answering the questions, guiding it. So if I'm going to steadfast just say, this is the only way that I am, these are my weaknesses, the ones at the bottom of the list, some of them I could grow and improve on as well. But yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to, let's redefine what a weakness is. A weakness isn't necessarily those talents are at the bottom of your profile. A weakness, as defined by Gallup, is anything that gets in the way of your success. So by that, your top talents could be a weakness. The other thing to point out is, just because something's at the bottom of your talent, your strengths profile, doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to get those same results. It just means that they don't live naturally in you. So for instance, you have strategic at number 9. It's fairly high in your profile. Mine's number 34. It's at the very bottom. That doesn't mean I'm not a strategic person, but in the realm of Clifton Strengths, what strategic means is somebody that can instinctively and quickly sort through information and figure out a decision forward. I can do that. It doesn't happen instantaneously for me. It takes, there's a lot of things that I need to take into consideration to get there. So I might lean in on my empathy or my individualization to assess, what do people feeling? What do people need in order to sort through that information and make a decision? So there's ways to use your upper talents, your more dominant talents, in order to compensate for those that are at the bottom.
We'll get to Nina's question in a moment. I just have another thing that's going on that I'm thinking about. I was thinking in a team context, how much this could actually help a manager and the team when they know each other's strengths or talents, and when they can, when they can see someone's core strength is maybe strategic, like you say, to then ask those people to lead a brainstorming session or or things like that, to just lean more on those talents, allowing those people to thrive more on those things that they're really good at.
Yes, I think that, and I would caution against, specifically putting people into roles based off of just their talent themes. It really is about what you've seen them do and what they actually really thrive in doing. So someone with strategic is likely going to be a good person to lead a brainstorming session because they'll be able to help sort through all of the ideas floating around. But I would definitely also take into consideration who that person is and, how they like to interact in those types of situations. Because you never want to use the talents as a label, because they show up differently with every single person.
Okay. So rather having a conversation around that and asking this person, what would you enjoy to do in the session? We've noticed this and this and this about you. What would you like to volunteer doing or doing differently, for instance? Would that be a better approach than just saying, we want you to do this?
Yes. I mean, I think one of the great things, I think a great manager can do is make sure you're having these conversations with the people that you manage. Don't make assumptions based off of whether it's Clifton Strengths or anything. Really have the conversations. There's an activity that we often do with teams called the Best of Us. And it's having people fill out 4 buckets, and then you could look at it collectively as a team. So it's, you get the best of me when. So allow someone to tell you what situations or circumstances they're going to really thrive in. Is it, throw me in with a group of a lot of people? Is it, I like to work on my own? Is it, I need a lot of time analyzing data, or I just give me some time to think things through? Or is it, I want to make decisions in the moment? The other is you get the worst of me when. And usually that is the opposite of, the best of me. What are those scenarios where, it might be please never put me in a spot where I'm at the front of the room leading, because I will freeze up. The other 2 questions are, please ask me to do more of. And I think this is a really important one that we don't think. It's there might be something that someone just really enjoys doing, but their job doesn't naturally allow them to do it. So you want to be able to make sure that when possible, you can put them in those positions, because yearning to do something is an indicator that there is a talent and a strength there. And then the last one is, please never ask me to do again. Now, of course, as a manager, you're going to probably get, please never ask me to fill out a timesheet or submit expenses or things like that. And there's going to be things that, people have to do. You can never only ever do the things that, you're in love with 100% of the time. But those 4 questions, a manager and an employee, or as a team looking at those 4 questions overall, can really help you figure out how to move your employees forward and how to move a team forward.
So can I just summarize that? I have them down. So the first one is, you'll get the best of me when. Is that right?
Yes.
The second one was, the worst of me when. Third was, please ask me to do more of. And the 4th is, please never ask me to do again.
Yes.
I think these are great for marriages and couples and dating sites.
It's also great if you're, you could do that on your own too, and help yourself reveal what are those things and then that's an opportunity. You go into a performance review And you can share that with, your manager. It doesn't have to be using the Clifton Strengths like terms, activator, individualization. It's more about how they show up and what are those needs that you have. And it really allows, like, it might be you going to your manager going, hey, you keep like pressuring me to give decisions on the spot, and I'm going to work better if I have just an hour just to go off and think on my own. Is there a way we can create that environment?
That's amazing. So let's quickly go to Nina's question as we're almost coming to the close. So she was saying the natural tendency is to briefly acknowledge strengths and then deep dive into deep weaknesses with detailed plans. So she was saying, how do we flip the script?
Yes.
How do we do it the other way around? Any insights?
Yeah. I mean, the truth of it is there's always going to be certain skill sets that we need to do in order to do our job properly. I think the opportunity to flip the script is, are we prescribing what the best way to do a job is based off of our own talents or the way we've always been told to do it? Is there a way to go, okay, what is the core thing we're struggling with? And how can we take a look at your top talents and apply them to reach that end, as opposed to it trying to be fixing something that it's going to take exceptionally more energy and time for someone to go from bad to only mediocre. But for someone to go to good to great or great to exceptional, that actually takes less energy. So how do we lean in and look at those things that you're already doing right and help you in the areas where you're struggling?
So what are your core takeaways that you want to leave people with today? If there was any advice that you could give?
I would say, I think, one, it's really pay attention. Even whether you take the assessment or not, whether you know your Clifton Strengths or not, which I think everyone should take it. I think it is an amazing way of kind of revealing things about ourselves that maybe we didn't fully understand. But pay attention. When you're going through your day, what are those things that really fuel you? What are those things that you look forward to doing? And what are those things that deplete you? What are the circumstances that just completely drain you, that you avoid doing? And start to ask yourself why that is. When you have something great happen, don't just celebrate it and go, okay, great, and move on. Take time to dissect like what happened there in the same way that you would if a failure happened. Because then you can go, okay, what went well? And then you can replicate it again, as opposed to the opposite, where we often try to look at those failures and, try to avoid them. And then the thing I want to make sure, because I don't think I touched on it, is I want to make sure that people understand that this is not a tool to take and then have it magically tell you what job you're supposed to have. It's not about the what role that you have. It really is about how you approach the role that you're in. So how do you use the talents that you have to be whatever it is in the best possible way?
It's really about personal growth and growth in a team as well, or growth as a leader, to really stepping into your purpose and showing up in the best possible way. What I really loved what you were saying is seeing what went well so that you can actually replicate that.
Yes.
And on an NLP level, what I've found is, which is similar to the weaknesses side that you spoke about, is when people, for instance, come to me for public speaking coaching, they would sit with a phobia or a fear of a time in their life where they were in primary school or something happened or people laughed at them, and now they never want to do that. And immediately they are imagining the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And they've created a strategy in their brain that actually gives them physiological impact. So they would start stuttering, stammering, going red, whatever. But some of the work that we do is actually like reframing that, also reprogramming that to change that experience. But like just a little thing that I say to people in training is just imagine the ideal way that you want it to go. Make a movie of that in your mind. And that's kind of like also with if something went well, replay the movie.
Yes.
Go and see like what happened there. And that's like timeline work as well. It's going back to those experiences that were really epic, times in your life where you were really confident, where you were really in flow, where you felt that you could be a great leader, and saying, well, I've done it before, so I can actually take it into this interview, or I can go and get some of that confidence of that conversation I had around that fireplace and go and replicate that in front of that audience, because you were still doing public speaking, even though it wasn't necessarily a corporate context.
Yes.
You know?
And I know we're at time, but we could have a whole other conversation about that.
We'll have to do more.
And the experiences that have shaped in terms of why we use certain talents, why we have and why we actually sometimes hide away our talents. And what you just talked about is definitely a part of it.
So if people want to contact you, I'll put all of your links afterwards in the recordings. But where would you like them to connect with you, Maghan? And what kind of work can you do with them? How can you help them?
I am always happy to connect with people. A lot of my talents are in the relationship building space. So I love having conversations with people, and I love helping people see their talents and put them in action. So you can find me on maghanhaggerty.com is my website, and there's a contact me form there if you want to book a 15-minute complimentary call to kind of discuss how strengths can play in your life.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. And I think in the future, we will definitely have to do another.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun. It went so fast. So appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.